We're living in a time where there's an awful lot of lies being exposed. We live in a world of lies, let's say. And what I want to do today is just talk about the different types of lie that are told and why they're told. And I'll illustrate this with some contemporary examples, which hopefully you'll find interesting. So the first type of lie that I want to talk about is what I would call a plausible lie. So on an individual basis, that this might be something that somebody you know has said to you that's not true, and it's plausible because you kind of trusted the person that told you the lie. They haven't lied to you before, and therefore that makes the lie plausible. On a macro scale, what might be plausible to one person might not be to another. But if I think back, if I'm being honest, Brexit, for example, that was an example of a lie that was plausible to me because back then, was it 2016? A very long time ago now. I kind of still thought that if there was a referendum, the politicians actually would implement the result of the referendum. It was something that I kind of just about believed in, but obviously, we haven't really left the European Union at all. The NHS would be another one, an example of a plausible lie. Back, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, I might have kind of believed that the NHS was there to kind of save lives. Not anymore, obviously. If I think back to Gulf War II, Saddam Hussein, weapons of mass destruction, for me that was never a plausible lie. I always thought that was, because I suppose by that stage I'd started to have doubts about government. And then the other one, I suppose, would be the People's Pantomime of 2020. For the first week, or no, I'd say the first 3 weeks, I was undecided. I didn't know whether it was a lie or whether there really was this kind of deadly thing. And by mid-April, I looked at the data, number of people departing this sphere, and it was just obvious that it was a scam. And I remember by August time I was making videos. The first one, August 2020, trying to alert people to this scam. That's when I did my first video, which was one that I did for Anna Breeze's channel. Now, a lot of people will say that she's controlled opposition, but I'll be sort of thankful for her, and I think Lee from Veritas Vincent would be, because that was something that got me into making videos. Who knows? I might have done or anyway, but it definitely kick-started me. Right, the second type of lie, I suppose you could call this the coerced lie. So people talk about 1984. I wonder whether people have actually read that book or not, but towards the end of the book, Winston Smith is being tortured by this character called O'Brien. I always think about James O'Brien. I wonder if O'Brien really is James O'Brien's real name, or is it just some sort of big club mockery? Anyway, O'Brien is torturing Winston Smith, and he's on a rack, and he's like, stretching him out and stuff, and he's asking them like, how many fingers have I got up? And he's showing like 4 fingers, and then if Winston Smith says 4, he goes, no, it's 5, or it's. And then he asks him what 2 + 2 is, and Winston Smith says it's 4, and he goes, no, it's not. So this type of coerced lie is, that the lie is a lie, but you're under external pressure to repeat the lie. And this seems, of course, we've seen some of this recently with government. So, if you think about in the UK, we're supposed to believe, like teachers are supposed to kind of talk to their students about, I don't know, citizenship and how Britain's a great country because we have democracy and free speech. That is obviously a a coerced lie, but teachers will often go along with these kind of consensuses, because if they don't, they lose their job. Obviously, the whole thing about what is a woman, that would be another example of a coerced lie. You know, people aren't allowed to say the truth anymore about what a woman actually is. They're not allowed to. If you do, you lose your job. So it's an example of coercion. A threat is being used against you to repeat the lie, and if you don't, something bad will happen to you. Now, I came across this on a micro scale about a couple of weeks ago with this Finnish guy who scammed me on I bought a second-hand CD player, and out of spite, you know, I'd knocked him down €5. I think he wanted €65. I gave him 60, and he was like really bitter about that, really bitter. Like most people here in Finland are very, very friendly, but you get an odd one and they're kind of a bit resentful, particularly, you know, if you're not from here and you're married to a Finnish woman or whatever, they get a bit kind of, some of them get a bit, anyway. So this guy, he wanted to get one over on me. So as I was opening my car boot, he yanked out the power cord cable, so that I had to go and buy a new power cord. And anyway, I kind of like called him out on that later on in a private message. And he's like trying to get me to repeat the lie that I lost the power cable, which is kind of just not, it's 12-volt power cables don't disconnect themselves. And it's not likely that I would have deliberately disconnected the power cord and threw it on the ground, because later on he claimed that that's what must have happened, that he'd found the power cord on his yard near where I'd parked my car, you know, so as if I'm going to actually disconnect the power cord and throw it on the floor. So, but he wanted me to repeat his lie, that it was my fault. I didn't want any money back from this guy. I just actually called his lie out. I just said to him, look, you know, you've got my €60 for a kind of a crap CD player that doesn't work properly. And you did pull the cord out. We both know that you did that. And I'm not going to repeat your lie. You know, you can threaten me with all sorts of stuff, but I'm not going to repeat your lie. So I think that's the other type of lie that I think is more pernicious, is the coerced lie. And I think, you know, we're seeing quite a lot of that at the moment. So we had, you know, Donald Fartman, you know, the one I mean, you know, that begins with T. I'm not even going to say his name because I suspect the algorithm kind of flags up stuff like that. But you know, the fat Fartman, all this stuff about Jeffrey Epstein. It's just like, what? You want me to? So, but what he's inviting people to do is to go along with a lie that is self-evidently a lie. And in this case, it's all about maintaining, being part of his little club, his little clique, his little cult, the cult of the fart man. And, you know, I suppose before that, and this is something that I suppose is quite interesting, because one person's plausible lie might be another person's coerced lie. So, for example, that stuff, you know, with the ketchup on his ear and that, you know, with the kind of the honestly, how could people believe that? It was just self-evidently a lie, absolute lie, you know. And then there's no like, if some, but what, there'd be some evidence of it. You'd see, like, it didn't have a hole in his, you know. No, honestly. Admittedly, though, you know, casting my mind back to 2001 and the 10th +1 of that month. I remember on that day, actually, I remember coming home from school. I remember when somebody told me, oh, there's, you know, something's crashed into these. And I went back home after I'd finished doing my lessons, and I was watching the TV for hours, and I was transfixed, you know, at the moment where the plane impacted with the kind of like the tall thing, and it kind of seemed to melt into the building. And for me, that was, at the time, it was like my eyes were telling me something, but my conditioning was, I didn't kind of, it took me until about maybe 3 or 4 years later before I kind of recognized that this was basically a coerced lie. It was just a coerced lie. Had to go along with this to kind of, otherwise you were like some crazy conspiracy theorist. So to sort of finish off with, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, according to him, the Russian dissident, I like this quote: "The simple step of a courageous individual is not to take part in the lie." So this is kind of the origins of my beef with, say, the NHS and the police, is that they went along with a lie. You know, by the summer of 2020, it was inconceivable that the People's Pantomime was anything else but a live action role play. It's inconceivable. There's no, and then also you could say that maybe by February 2021, it was inconceivable that anybody working in the health service didn't know that the magic juice was deleting people and maiming people. But these people, they chose to go along with a lie. They took part in a lie, and they did so willingly for reasons of self-interest, to keep their jobs and their pensions and all the rest of it. The same would apply with the police. They're going along with lies, aren't they? You know, about you know, relating to. So I think all of this is quite interesting. We are born with free will, and we have some people are more gullible than others. I suppose in the long run, there's a learning process that takes place, and if you've already been lied to, you're supposed to learn, and you're supposed to reassess the person or the organization that's lied to you. And if you continue to trust those people, then you know what you're doing is going along with a coerced lie. And I think that the coerced lie is particularly pernicious because it's like a big power trip, you know, and it's a type of thing that a psychopath would do. And I know this might be a bit boring here, going on about the dude, the CD player dude, but I genuinely believe that this guy was a psychopath, because he was lying, and it was just obvious to both of us that he was lying, but he insisted that I was going to like agree with his lie, and I just wasn't going to do that. And I think the same thing is happening now with governments. They're asking people to repeat what the people know is a lie. It's not like being tricked. There's no trickery going on here. This isn't the type of plausible lie that I kind of talked about at the beginning of the video. The lies that are being told now and that you're being asked to repeat are coerced lies, and I think they're particularly corroding to the soul. That if you go along, if you repeat things that you know to be lies, then I think there are pretty bad consequences to that. You lose your soul, I think. You lose your connection to consciousness and to God. You've severed your connection to the Holy Spirit, I believe. So what does the Bible say about all this? Well, in Exodus chapter 20, they go through the 10 commandments, and the last one is, thou shalt not bear false witness, which is basically, don't lie. Don't say that somebody's done something or not done something when they have or they haven't. This is very, very important. John chapter 8 verse 44 also relates what Jesus said on the issue of lying. So I'll just start a little bit earlier, actually. Verse 42. Jesus said to them, if God really were your Father, you would love me, because I come from God, and now I am here. I did not come on my own authority, but he sent me. Why do you not understand what I say? Is it because you cannot bear to listen to my message? You are the children of your father, the devil, and you want to follow your father's desires. From the very beginning he was a murderer, and has never been on the side of truth, because there is no truth in him. When he tells a lie, he is only doing what is natural to him,
because he is a liar and the father of all lies. But I tell you the truth, and that is why you do not believe me. Which one of you can prove that I am guilty of sin? If I tell the truth, then why do you not believe me? He who comes from God listens to God's words. You, however, are not from God, and that is why you will not listen.
Just some final thoughts from me. I remember being at school. There was also the last job I was in. It was kind of a pretty awful place, pretty toxic place. And in the short run, it might have been an exercise in reducing kind of pain and hassle to not tell the truth. But I kind of decided that I wasn't going to do that, that I was always going to tell the truth. And I'm very glad that I did that. I'm very, very, very glad that I did that, because I think it shocked people, because I think that institution, everybody lied about everything. It was something that made me stand out from the rest of them. And I guess, this is, Gandhi talked about this, didn't he? Be the change that you want to see. And I think I developed a reputation for kind of always telling the truth, to the point where I think they sort of like said, oh, they probably talk behind my back like I'm autistic or something, and that, I'll only ever tell the truth. But I think it's important. I think, was it also Nietzsche who said something about, like, sometimes it might be good to tell a lie, suppose somebody comes round to your house and they want to, I don't know, murder one of your family members, would you actually tell them where that person is at the moment so they can go and kill them, or would you lie to them? I don't know, that type of, it's like dancing on a pinhead, isn't it? But for me personally, it's very, very important that we tell the truth, and we have to be the change that we want to see. The only concession that I would give is that I think sometimes it's okay to say nothing to somebody. I think that's perfectly legitimate, just to walk away. Then you're not lying. You're just refusing to answer somebody's question. And I think that's what you would do in that situation. You would refuse to answer. So yes, I hope you found that interesting. Nice sunny day today, off to the beach, and hope you're enjoying yourself wherever you are. And God bless.